You're too boring." The sentence cut through Daniel like a quiet knife. No shouting, no tears, just those 3 words spoken softly, as if she'd rehearsed them for months. Emma's eyes didn't flicker. They were steady, unflinching, like someone who'd already left long before she said goodbye. Have you ever watched the person you love walk away and realize they're taking the version of you that only existed in their eyes? Have you ever wondered who you are when no one's looking? The clock ticked. The rain began to fall. Daniel didn't argue. He only nodded, his heart sinking in perfect silence. When the door closed behind her, the sound echoed through every corner of his life. But in that hollow quiet, something small and stubborn lit inside him. Maybe boredom wasn't death. Maybe it was the seed of rebirth. He turned toward the window, whispered, "Then I'll become unforgettable." The shot lingered on the reflection of his face in the rain-smeared glass, one chapter ending, another quietly forming. The house felt too big without her. Every echo became a reminder. But Daniel didn't flee the pain. He let it settle. Grief, he realized, was proof that he had once lived fully. Standing before the mirror, his reflection looked like a stranger, a man who had survived someone else's story. He pressed his palms against the glass and whispered, "You were right. I was boring." The words didn't sting anymore. They sounded like a challenge. He began with silence. Jogging before sunrise, cooking simple meals, reading books without reason. For once, Daniel didn't move for anyone else's gaze. The stillness he'd feared became his foundation. Every day he changed something small, until the man in the mirror started to look alive again. Emma hadn't planned to look. But late one evening, her phone feed betrayed her. A photo, Daniel laughing under city lights, a spark in his eyes she hadn't seen in years. For the first time, she wondered if maybe she hadn't outgrown him. Maybe she'd never really known him. That night, Daniel stood on the bridge overlooking the city. Cars hummed below, wind brushed against his jacket, and the river shimmered with reflected neon. He smiled, not at the memory of what was lost, but at the life waiting beyond it. The man she'd called boring had learned to live loudly, in silence. The first morning Daniel woke up by the sea, he didn't check his phone. He didn't think of Emma. The world beyond his window shimmered in blues and golds, a city alive with strangers, waves, and second chances. He'd rented a small studio overlooking the harbor, the kind of place where silence hummed with promise. Reinvention wasn't a grand decision. It was a quiet rebellion. He joined a photography class, bought a used motorbike, started saying yes to moments that once scared him. The man who'd been left behind was slowly learning to leave himself behind, too. He whispered to the sea, "Let's begin again." The waves answered, not with comfort, but with challenge. Daniel spent hours walking along the coast with his camera. He wasn't chasing beauty. He was learning to see it again. Every photo captured a world that didn't need permission to be alive. Somewhere between the crashing waves and silent shutter clicks, he felt his heart sensing with something bigger. For the first time, his life wasn't about what he'd lost. It was about what he was becoming. At a local art cafe, Daniel met Lena, a painter who spoke with her hands and laughed with her eyes. She didn't ask about his past. She only asked what he saw when he looked at light. He didn't flirt. He listened. Maybe healing doesn't come from forgetting love, but from finding people who remind you that it still exists. Emma's phone buzzed again. Another tag. A gallery post. Daniel, standing beside one of his framed photos of the sea. He looked alive in a way she didn't recognize. She zoomed in without meaning to, staring at the curve of his smile. Regret has a strange sound, like waves breaking inside your chest. That night, Daniel and Lena stood by the pier, the moon stretching a silver path across the water. Daniel lifted his camera, but for once, he didn't press the shutter. Some moments, he thought, were meant to be lived, not captured. He smiled, feeling the quiet pulse of the waves, not as an ending, but as a heartbeat. Daniel never meant to become someone. But the moment his photographs hung on a white wall, strangers began to see what he'd seen. Beauty in stillness, power in simplicity. His exhibit was called Quiet Revolutions. The name wasn't about art, it was about survival. As guests moved from frame to frame, Daniel stood back, watching a version of himself he barely recognized reflected in their eyes. The man who once begged for love now created it from light. Emma lingered by the doorway, unnoticed at first. She had come out of curiosity, or maybe guilt. The photos on the walls felt like pages from a book she never finished. One showed Daniel's reflection in tidal water, fractured yet whole. She blinked hard, realizing it wasn't the sea that changed him. It was leaving her. After the crowd left, Lena joined Daniel by the window, overlooking the darkening harbor. She didn't praise him. She didn't need to. Her silence was affirmation enough. Daniel turned toward the sea where the city lights shimmered like promises. "Funny," he said softly. "I thought reinvention would make me louder. But it just made me listen better." Lena smiled. "That's what living sounds like." Later, Emma walked alone through the same streets Daniel now called home. She passed cafes where music spilled out and laughter echoed. Every corner seemed to carry traces of him, not in memory, but in mood. The realization hit. He hadn't just changed. He'd outgrown the world she'd built around him. Daniel stood on the rooftop of his building, camera in hand, capturing the horizon before dawn. Behind him, the world slept. Below him, the tide moved. He no longer felt the ache of what was gone. Reinvention wasn't about becoming someone new. It was about remembering the parts of himself he'd buried just to be loved. He lowered the camera and smiled to no one. The man who'd been called boring had turned silence into art. Emma tried to fill her days with noise, brunches, deadlines, music that drowned thought. Yet Daniel's photographs seemed to follow her. Billboards, magazine features, a news clip of his next exhibit. The world saw him now. She only saw what she'd lost. Daniel's world widened. He rode along the coast on his motorbike, camera slung over his shoulder, chasing the color of skies he'd never bothered to notice before. Reinvention no longer hurt, it thrilled. Emma wandered into his new exhibit unannounced. Their eyes met for the first time in months. The air shifted. Not heavy, not angry, just full of things unsaid. Daniel nodded politely. No bitterness. Only distance. That stung more than any words could. Outside, rain began again. Emma waited under the awning, watching Daniel walk away toward the pier lights. She wanted to call his name, to explain, to undo. But the storm drowned her voice before it rose. Daniel reached the pier alone. He didn't look back. Somewhere between the thunder and the tide, he forgave her. Not aloud. Not for her, but for himself. Forgiveness, he realized, was just another form of freedom. Months passed. Daniel's art now toured cities, his name printed on banners, his voice calm in interviews. Yet behind every smile, he felt a quiet distance from the man who'd once needed saving. Freedom had taught him peace, but also isolation. Emma sat in her apartment, surrounded by things that no longer mattered. Clothes, books, old photos she couldn't throw away. She whispered into the stillness, "I just wanted something more." The silence answered, "You had it." A mutual friends gathering brought them face to face again. Laughter, wine, background chatter filling the space. Daniel didn't flinch. Emma did. Time had softened him, but sharpened her. "You seem happy," she said. He smiled gently. "I am." She nodded, but her eyes trembled with memory. After the party, they walked together down the quiet boardwalk. No apologies, no promises. Just shared air and the sound of waves. You were never boring. Emma whispered. Daniel smiled faintly. Maybe I just needed the right silence. They parted at the end of the pier. No grand gesture, only understanding. Emma watched him fade into the night, realizing love doesn't always return. Daniel glanced once over his shoulder, grateful but unbound. Some closures whisper. This one roared inside them both. Months blurred into calm. Daniel no longer chased meaning. It simply lived beside him. The studio by the harbor became his world. Mornings with the tide, evenings with the city hum, nights filled with soft music and paint-stained hands. He wasn't lonely anymore. He was steady. Yet sometimes, when dawn folded gold over the sea, he wondered where Emma's mornings began. Healing, he learned, doesn't erase. It integrates. Emma had left the city. She rented a small cottage inland where waves gave way to fields. She spent days tending to small things. Plants, letters, the slow art of listening to herself. There was quiet now, but not emptiness. She finally understood what Daniel had meant about the right silence. A magazine reached out for a joint feature. 2 perspectives on love after loss, his art, her essays. Neither had known the other would be invited. When Daniel read her words, he felt no sting, only recognition. Every sentence mirrored the distance. They both need to grow. When the feature launched, the world read their stories side by side. His about finding light through the lens, hers about learning stillness after the storm. Daniel smiled at the coincidence. He didn't reach out, but he felt her presence in every paragraph. Some connections, he realized, survive only in the spaces between words. That evening, Emma watched the same coastline from her cottage window. She could see the far-off lights of the city. His city, blinking faintly across the horizon. The distance no longer hurt. It simply existed, like the tide. She whispered, "We made it, didn't we?" Somewhere out there, the ocean carried the unspoken answer back to her. The sea woke first, rolling against the harbor walls like a heartbeat that had found its rhythm again. Daniel lifted the shutters of his studio and felt the salt air sweep across the room. It carried the smell of varnish, coffee, and calm. He gathered old photographs from the floor, portraits, waves, fragments of a life once small, and arranged them in a neat stack. The silence didn't accuse him anymore. It encouraged him. Every failed attempt, every lonely night, every goodbye had led to this quiet morning where nothing hurt. He whispered, half smiling, "This is what it means to begin again." Miles away, Emma stepped onto a narrow country path still wet with morning dew. She inhaled the scent of earth and lavender, a rhythm slower than the city, but more honest. Each step through the field was a small surrender, one she no longer resisted. The ache had turned to gratitude. For love that once was, for distance that taught her peace, for the woman she'd finally met in the quiet. Daniel's final exhibition filled with the hush of expectation. Locals, tourists, and students wandered between frames, pausing at a centerpiece titled Horizons We Build. He didn't speak much. He let the work do that. Near closing, Lena arrived, a quiet smile lighting her face. "Leaving's not running," she told him. "It's knowing you've finished listening to the same wave." He laughed softly. "Then, I think I'm ready." That same evening, Emma returned from the market to find an envelope tucked under her door. The handwriting stopped her breath. Steady, familiar, unhurried. Inside lay a simple invitation to Daniel's farewell exhibit. She read it twice, then folded it gently. She didn't. Some stories, and not with reunion, but with mutual peace. She placed the envelope on the mantel beside a seashell from their last shared trip and whispered, "Thank you for teaching me to listen." The last night arrived quietly. Daniel stood on a cliff where the ocean stretched endless, his camera hanging idle by his side. The sky melted from orange to violet, gulls tracing slow arcs above the surf. He raised the viewfinder not to freeze the moment but to honor it. One click, enough? He exhaled and smiled. Boring, huh? He murmured. The wind carried the words away like laughter. Some lives don't circle back. They unfold toward peace. His did. Hers did. And somewhere in the distance, the sea held both their reflections, endlessly moving, never lost.